All right. Did everyone have a chance to look at the slides? Hands, you got a chance to. All right, cool. So we're gonna be going over the other half of the flight instruments, our six pack, okay? So with that, we'll just jump right into it. So we're talking about the gyroscopic instruments. What were the other three we had? Sorry?
Air data,
Yeah, and what instruments were they?
altimeter, vertical speed indicator, and airspeed.
Airspeed, altimeter, and vertical speed, good. And where did they get their information from?
System. And pitot.
Good, pitot and static, okay? Well, we've got three more. And they're gonna be using the gyros, and the gyro is gonna be either powered by vacuum pressure or electrical, okay? And then we're gonna talk about rigidity in space and gyroscopic precession. Which one of these topics out of those two have we talked about already? How? In what regard? What did the conversation, how'd that go? What were we talking about?
Talking about thrust.
Not thrust. You're close. No, it wasn't the torque. Now so the thrust is dealing with which of the four turning tendencies? Yeah, well, which one? Actually, two of them, right? If you remember right. Which one were we talking about? Dealt with the thrust.
The left turning tendency is plane because of turning the propeller.
We have four of them, right?
Right.
Okay, yes. The propeller. The P factor was one of them.
Yes.
P factor also affected something else. What was that? Pressures. Remember the pressures?
The pressure about the whole of the aircraft.
Okay. What are the four turning tendencies? It's a great question. Anybody? P factor's one. Somebody, come on. Somebody's got to give me another one if you can. This is stuff you gotta know. Guys gonna draw down the little drawings I did? What was it? Spiraling slipstream. That's the one that's also affected. That's the pressures, right? As there's the velocity of one side is greater than the velocity of the other, so the pressure on the side of higher velocity is louder. Lower, yeah, less. The pressure is less. Remember, as velocity increases, the pressure decreases. So that's what helps cause the spiraling slipstream. What are the last two? Somebody said torque. A torque effect. So what's the other one? It's the final one. Hey!
What was that?
Gyroscopic action. It's dealing with gyroscopic precession. Remember, we watched the video on it, right? With the bicycle wheel. It's rotating clockwise. Which way did it rotate? To the left. And it's a left turning tendency. So we're going to talk about, again, it's going to come up here with the gyroscopic instruments because the gyroscopes, what do? How does a gyroscope work? It spins. All right. That should look familiar. Okay? The way the gyroscope works is it's going to want, because it's spinning, it wants to stay in place. It's called rigidity in space. It wants to remain there. Basically, in all these instruments, we are rotating around the gyroscope inside our instrument. It is resisting the turns, and that's how it indicates the movements. And the next one, that's the gyroscopic precession, right? It wants to stay in place, and it will, you can add, so one of the things we talked about with the propeller is that one of the left turning tendencies, you really feel it in the tail wheel as the plane is kind of at an angle and it lifts up, the tail comes up. So you're applying a force here, and it is felt here, 90 degrees ahead of the rotation, okay? So that plays a part also in some of these instruments. But what we're most worried about is rigidity in space. It resists movement. It wants to stay the way it is as it continues spinning. The trick is you got to keep it spinning. Well, that's why we have the vacuum system and why we have the electrical system that helps with that. All right, vacuum gyroscopic instruments, the attitude indicator and the heading indicator. And then you have two different ones you could have in there, the rate of turn indicator or the turn and skid indicators, okay? And each one of those indicators, does anybody know what those two have built into it in addition to the vacuum side? There's something that's driven by gravity on it.
On the top two?
No, I'm sorry, these bottom two here. In the gyroscopic instruments, there's a little,
That little ball?
yeah, what's that ball called?
You're in a turn coordinator.
But it's got a specific, it's an inclinometer. That's what it's called. And that is also part of the instrument. And there's a whole section about it, well, about a paragraph of it. Really, ultimately, what it's doing is it's controlled by the gravity and the forces it's felt. So if you are in a nice coordinated turn, the gravity will be straight down through the center of the airplane. Doesn't matter how steep a bank it is. So, all right, vacuum system. Typically, this is what you're gonna have. You may have two vacuum pumps. You may have two relief valves. Depends on the airplane. But vacuum pump, the air filter, vacuum gauge, the relief valve, and you may have an enunciator. Ours do, so that's why I put it up there. And this is how it works. So, the vacuum filter is right here. That is actually in the cockpit. It's behind the instrument panel. Air is drawn through it, and it goes through the suction gauge to show you what the suction pressure is, through the heading indicator, through the attitude indicator, through the vacuum relief valve, which is going to maintain suction where it's supposed to be, so you don't get an overpressurization of the system and damage your indicators. The pump is drawing all that air with an overboard. Does anybody know where that overboard is? Where is the pump?
It is on the engine.
Yeah. It's an engine-driven vacuum pump. Where's the overboard? Nope. It's actually in the engine. So the pump actually has comes through one tube and right out off of it into just the engine compartment. The pump's only about that big. It's not very big at all. But that's how it works. It's very simple. Does anybody know what's happening inside the indicators now? What is happening inside the indicators?
The pressure from the air being sucked through is turning the gyro.
How?
Looks like one of those pictures, little fins.
Yeah, there's little fins on it. That's all it is. Just drawing air across the fins, which makes it spin constantly. That's all it is. Very simple system. Does anybody know why it's a vacuum, why they use vacuum and not blower? Yeah, but why couldn't you have a blower blowing through the air through there?
Well, I feel like that it wouldn't be as accurate because the air is blowing into it instead of blowing into it.
Actually, what it is that you don't want to get contamination from the actual pump itself. That's why they draw it through and it goes through the filter first. So it's to help reduce contamination because those indicators, if you get any dust or anything in them, it's going to gum it up. We already have enough problems with friction. Friction is why the heading indicator will become inaccurate after a while. So you have to constantly, I would recommend about every 15 minutes or so in cruise flight, check the heading indicator against your mag compass.
But if you had like a blower filter, wouldn't that be the same?
Yeah, but
So
you'd also have the pump then inside the cockpit, more likely, and it would be loud. I mean, it could be still in there, but when I talked to maintenance about this, when I went through my CFI training, we had a maintainer come in and talk to us about it. They actually use carbon blades, and as they spin, they put off a fine dust. So you'll be going through vacuum filters constantly. It's just less maintenance this way. Less chance of messing up the indicators. Questions on this? So this is no different than the left turning tendencies. You know, this is stuff you guys gotta know, how this stuff works. So please ask questions.
What PowerPoint is the last turn tendencies in, if you have it?
Very first. I think we're gonna do a review session. We try to do this. We have a lesson coming up that's kind of short. I think we'll use the Thursday that week and we'll do a review. Do you know what that means though? Well, I'll say no, it's not a test.
Please.
Who's gonna be asking the questions?
You.
You guys will be teaching stuff to each other. So come in prepared because I am not gonna answer the questions. I will ask the questions. I want you guys to know, you have to know this stuff. What I'm trying to do is help you so that when you I had a question in here from another student, and they didn't want to ask it in front of the class, but the individual was under the impression that the check ride is going to happen very soon. And it's not. Check ride is down the road quite a ways, right? Trying to give you guys a leg up, though. When you get into your flight training, a lot of the stuff's not going to be explained as you go. And this is the stuff you have to know when you get to the check ride at the very, very end. So if you study it now and you see what you have to know, do flashcards, keep the PowerPoints, go through this stuff, and you continually practice it as you go, you'll be ready by the time you get there. And you'll know what's actually happening in the airplane. When you're flying, you're like, oh yeah, I see that it's processing that my heading indicator's off now. When we took off, everything's lined up. Now it's showing that we're on heading 170, but the compass is showing that we're on heading 190, 20 degrees off. Well, that's because the heading indicator has friction in there, so it's slowed the gyro down and it hasn't progressed properly. There you go. That's how that works. When you look at the vacuum indicator, you understand that the 4.8 to 5.8 inches of mercury that they're looking for means that the vacuum relief valve is doing its job. That it is for making sure that that suction gate, the system is operating at the level it's supposed to be. If it's too weak, the indicators aren't going to work properly. If it's too strong, it could damage the indicators. So that's why all this stuff's important. It's going to help you in the plane. You see these things and it'll make sense to you. Attitude indicator is going to show you pitch and bank information. It's basically your false horizon, and it's very helpful. So what were the two most important indicators out of that six-pack? Who remembers?
You said this one and the altimeter.
Not the attitude. Altimeter for sure. What was the other one?
Heading indicator.
Heading indicator. Those ones are good. You're going to look at those mainly once you're established in something. Straight level flight. Once you're established in a climb. Once you're established in a descent. Because that's going to show you what you need. If you're established in a turn, when to stop the turn. The attitude indicator, though, is really helpful, and it's most important when you are changing something. Say you want to go from straight level to a climb. You're going to utilize that. So you're going to set the plane up for whatever pitch attitude you need to maintain a specific climb rate or climb airspeed. Same thing for descents. And you will set your banks. You want to do a 20-degree bank, you'll be looking at the attitude indicator. So this is for setting up the initial movements. And then you monitor the other indicators as you go through it. Indications of 10, 20, 30, and 60 and 90 degrees for the bank side. One that's not on there that you're going to have to be very familiar with is 45 degrees. 45 degrees is the bank angle you're going to do for steep turns, which is a maneuver. It's the performance maneuver you're going to have to practice and do on your check ride. But it's pretty simple. 45 degrees is right between 30 and 60. So just put bank the plane until your little caret is right in between the two. Your pitch indications are at 5, 10, 15, and 20. Typically 10 and 20 are the only ones listed, but there's going to be lines at each of those. And that's for climbs and for above the horizon and for below the horizon. and it's usually blue over brown. Like that. So 10, 20, 30, 60, 90 degrees. And then 5, 10, 20, I'm sorry, 5, 10, 15, and 20. Same for underneath. Here's your attitude indicator. So you can see the gyro in there, and it does provide you the fins. So you have an idea. It's air is being drawn through, and it's just spinning the gyro around. Yes?
What friction you would, like when you say that it would get in there?
Well, it's connected to a rod, right? There's friction on that. Even if you lubricate it, it's still going to have some friction. So there is resistance. It's not perfect. So, and that will slow down. Usually it's not an issue with the attitude indicator. The heading indicator is.
Okay.
Because that one, if you're going to be flying around and moving, and it will constantly be changing, and the gyro's spinning, and it's not going to always keep up. So you will have to occasionally look back at the magnetic compass and make sure that it's aligned.
Okay.
All right, heading indicator, it is designed to be used with the magnetic compass. What were some of the issues that we had with the magnetic compass?
Bounces around.
Yeah, it bounces around, right? It's hard to read. It oscillates a lot when you've got turbulence during a turn. Remember, there's the turning errors. So overshoot north, undershoot south. I'm sorry, undershoot north, overshoot south, accelerate north, decelerate south. So all these wonderful things we get to deal with. You don't have to deal with the heading indicator. You enter into a turn, it rotates nice and smoothly. Very easy to read. Also, you guys remember that magnetic compass I showed you, the picture of it where it had the disc and it rotates like this? It's actually opposite. When you're looking at the compass and your heading indicator, the compass rotates in a different direction than you're actually turning. So if you try to, it makes doing compass turns really difficult. The really nice ones are the flat cards where it's it's a vertical facing one, so it's a lot easier to read. That actually will show true the way you're going, but it still has that issue where bouncing around the turbines will make it difficult to read. Typically marked in 30-degree increments. It always drops the 0 off. So say you want to go to heading 300, it's going to be the 30. If you're going to heading 030, it's going to be the 3. So those are things you're going to have to think about. And you'll get used to it. It makes more sense the more you do it. And it's really simple. It just kind of can throw you off. You're not thinking about when you first start flying. When your instructor tells you to turn to heading 030, and you start turning the airplane to 300.
It's true.
And there's what I'm talking about. So north, south, east, and west are typically labeled. Not always. I've flown older airplanes that had 0 and 180, 270, 090, but most of them are like that. I'm pretty sure all of our Cessnas and A2s are like that. And that little knob down in the corner there on the bottom right, does anybody know what that's for?
Just adjusting.
Yeah, so you can adjust it and set it. So what you have to do is you push it in and rotate it. And that's how you can move it to align with the compass. And here's your heading indicator. So there's a gear drive, and this is where a lot of the friction is going to come into play. And also through there. So there's a lot going on inside the heading indicator. So ultimately, though, you just have to occasionally check it against magnetic compass. It's really not a big deal. The only time it can be a pain is, like I said, turbulence. And you want to check it when you have the wings level, and hopefully you have a moment where the plane is smooth and the oscillations have slowed down and it's pretty accurate at that point, where you can accurately read it. And you'll get an idea as it swings around sometimes where you can see this point where it's the most, like, kind of dead center on between the oscillations. It's going 10 degrees this way and 10 degrees that way, you know it's at the middle of that. So, but there's your inner workings. All right, turn indicator and turn coordinator. Two different indicators. I have not used a turn indicator. It's called a turn and bank indicator, I think. I've never used it. Every airplane I've flown had a turn coordinator. And they all incorporate the inclinometer, like I said. And that's used to determine the quality of your turn. It will indicate a slip or a skid. And we're going to talk about that here in a sec. This is the turn indicator. All it's doing is telling you the rate at which you're turning. So it doesn't show wings or anything like that. It's just, hey, you were turning this way now you're turning this way. It's kind of the old school style. There's your inclinometer. And this is the way it's set up. Oh, let me back up real fast. One thing I forgot to put on here. Attitude, that attitude in the heading are what kind of gyros? What drives them? Vacuum, the vacuum gyros. Turn coordinator and the turn indicator, electric. All right. Yeah, DC electric. Okay. It's actually really good. It plays a big part in instrument flying. So if your vacuum pump fails, what did you just lose? Nope. Vacuum pump.
Your heading indicator and your altitude.
Altitude.
Attitude.
Yeah, heading. Well, did you really lose your heading?
You know, magnetic.
Still got the magnetic compass. Ultimately, all you lost was your attitude indicator. But again, that's not the primary way we maintain our wings level and our straight level. What if we lose the test whether or not you guys have actually read about your pitot-static system in the airplane? If you lose your pitot-static system, if something happens and your pitot probe ices up and your static port ices up, what happens? What did you just lose?
Your speed.
What's that?
Lose your airspeed.
If you lost, if the static port and the pitot port froze over, you still only lost two. You lost the airspeed indicator. Luke, what can you do? Hey, you have an alternate static source. Well, that is it uses the static pressure inside the cockpit. So, you still have altitude and you still have vertical speed. All you lost was your airspeed. And how do we control our airspeed? Pitch and power. So if we set the airplane to 2,100 RPMs and we maintain an altitude, Joe, how fast should we be going?
Say that again.
2,100 RPMs, and we are not climbing or descending. What airspeed should we be at?
90 knots.
90 knots. And 172. So we still didn't lose. We're still safe, aren't we? You still have your turn coordinator if you've lost the vacuum system because you still know which way you're turning, left or right, and if your wings are level, and if what kind of turn you're doing. You'll still have your vertical speed and your altimeter. So you still got 3 out of the 6, which is fine. And you have the compass, so you've really only lost 2 of your 6 indicators.
So that's a backup for the altimeter.
What is the turn coordinator? This is telling you if you're in a bank or not. So this is what we actually have. So say we get into a left turn, the plane will actually move. The indicator doesn't, the plane does on that indicator. And then the ball will show slip or skid unless you're using rudder properly, and then everything's great and you're going to coordinate the turn. Yeah, that's going to show you a bank. There's no pitch indication on it. But again, pitch can be taken, you can derive the pitch information from the altimeter. Yeah. Does anybody know what the significance of this hash mark and this hash mark is. It's not the angle of bank.
Standard,
Say it louder.
standard.
Yeah, somebody else said it too.
It's written.
2-minute turns, a standard rate turn, which is a 2-minute turn. You will do 360-degree turn in 2 minutes. That changes based on your airspeed. Because it will show you the 2-minute turn regardless of your airspeed. How do you figure out what angle of bank you need to be at? Just look at the attitude indicator. Once you put it on, look and see what angle you're at on the attitude indicator. How many degrees of bank are you in? And as you change speeds, you'll see that the bank angle varies.
The 2-minute turn or the standard turn rate, is that what it's called?
It's called a standard rate turn. And all turns in instrument flying are standard rate. The reason you want to practice that is because if you get into clouds, you guys, none of you will be instrument rated when you get private. You still have to know what to do for the clouds. You will have to do some instrument flying, so you'll be wearing your limiting device. And you will need to practice standard rate turns because that's what ATC is going to be expecting you to do. That's how they can predict where you're going to be at and give you headings, and they'll know how long it's going to take you to get those turns done. Everything is done at standard rate when you're under the farmers. All right. How you guys feel about all that?
Is, how often, what's the likelihood of losing your electrical system? Electrical,
Have you ever lost it in your car? Have you ever had an alternator die?
I haven't, but I know it happens.
I mean, it's happened to me before in my car. I have not lost, so I have lost brakes, well, one brake. I'll tell you, that's fun, trying to stop an airplane with just one brake. Because the wheels are braked independently of each other. That's interesting. And I've lost a magneto a couple times in flight. I have had an alternator failure, but it was kind of an intermittent thing. Ended up, I don't think we lost the alternator. It was just it was a mating issue between the alternator and something else, one of the power conditioners. So it kept showing a fault when there really wasn't one. But I've never lost an alternator. I have yet to lose an engine. So there's always that chance, though.
It's
a
a
whole-
reliable system. is what you're saying.
Fairly. It's man-made, so reliable as it can be.
And how reliable is the vacuum system?
Pretty reliable. You have to understand the limitations of it, though. That's one of the key things, is understanding the limitations of all your systems. When you get to an idle situation, when you're pulling power out of the idle, remember, it's engine driven. What do you think's happening to your vacuum system? Yeah, you might drop and you might get a vacuum enunciator. So ultimately what's going to happen is your heading indicator might be a little off. Your attitude indicator is really not going to be too bad, though. There's sufficient suction in there that's going to keep it level. You're not too worried about it for the most part. When you're in an idle situation, you're probably doing a descent or something like that visually, so you shouldn't be inside the noise. And then you put the power back in and everything's fine. You'll look and you see your heading indicators off by 10 degrees, so you'll adjust it as well. It's not a big deal. I have yet to lose, I really haven't had too many failures. I've been pretty fortunate. I've had some weird things happen, like on my initial solo, autopilot turned on by itself and tried to take me out to the practice area when I was trying to make a left-hand turn. The plane was trying to turn right. And the Sheridan Patel started to become big planes. And it was kind of scary. Because I was so low. Joe, what happened to you on your solo flight?
I had an engine that was being temperamental.
And what happened?
I aborted my takeoff.
And what happened?
I braked accordingly.
This is as far as you want to go with it?
Sure.
Okay. Luke, didn't you have something happen?
Same stupid plane.
On my first solo or one of your solos?
Well, you just had something recently happen, but didn't something else happen on one of your solos?
First solo.
Well, what happened recently?
Oh, this last one,
Yeah.
this aircraft
aircraft that was going to go from me actually flipped over on the runway and landed upside down off the runway, so they closed the airport.
While he was in the pattern.
Yeah. Track basement.
But he was in the pattern.
I was pretty touchy to go behind them, and we did have some light flares, and I had to work it for a while and figure out what to do.
What do you do in that situation?
That's the risk.
Huh?
That's the risk.
So one of the unique things about your solo is you're only allowed to fly at the airport that your instructor is authorized you to fly at.
However, comma, in an emergency.
Yes. So why do we talk about all this stuff? Why are we going through this? Why am I trying to share some information with you? Why do I ask you all these questions?
Knowledge is power.
We need to know it.
Okay, but why?
So we're prepared
For what?
situation.
Thanks, smart decision.
Okay. Prepared. So how do you prepare for something?
Practice. Go over it,
Imagination.
figure out how many ways to do that.
How do you do that? There's a game.
In your
A
head.
what if game. What if this happens? What do you do? It's risk management. It's all about safety, guys. All of this is about safety and risk management. This is what the FAA is going to want to know about. Okay. Luke had never thought that he was going to have to divert from the pattern. I guarantee it. Never thought it would happen. Joe was not expecting to have this situation. He almost lost an engine. There was a fuel injector issue, we think. Not 100% sure what was wrong with that airplane. And one of the things you'll brief for, if you've read your emergency procedures, which you should, if you experience an engine failure or an abnormality, if something just doesn't feel right, you notice you're not generating as much power as you're used to, the RPMs aren't as high, something just doesn't feel normal,
Get instinct.
abort the takeoff.
Don't take your problem into the air.
You'll experience that. Power idle, stop the airplane. Better to stop on the runway than to try to take off and not be able to climb. So, all of this is what if game. Luke got lucky because I was out in practice area. Joe did exactly what he was supposed to do because every time we go up, anytime you get ready for takeoff, you go through the emergency procedures checklist. If we experience an engine failure or abnormality on the takeoff roll, we're going to immediately close the throttle, stop straight ahead, braking as required. If there's not enough runway remaining, fuel shuttle valve out, mixture cut off, ignition off, battery off, we'll stop straight ahead and avoid obstacles. If we experience an engine failure after takeoff, we'll land on the remaining runway within 30 degrees of center line. We will not attempt a 180-degree turn. Do not do a 180-degree turn, okay? You won't have enough altitude. If you do have enough altitude, you're not going to be going through all this as fast as I do because you have more time. All of these emergency procedures are when something happens immediately and you have no time. So you have to know exactly what you're going to do. If there's not enough runway remaining, proceed straight ahead to the safest location we can find. Fuel selector off, mixture cut off, ignition off, battery stays on. For flaps. Get those flaps out. You want to land as slow as you can. Make a radio call if you have time. Not a priority. Once the landing is assured, battery off, doors open. You can land as slow as you can. Why do the doors go open? Because they'll be crushed. Yeah. You want to have to wait for the fire department to come out to the jaws of life? What if the plane's on fire? Not if the plane's on fire. So, checklists, everything, knowledge, it's all preparing you in case something happens. The reliable system just decides to not work that day. What do? You know, this is where having knowledge of the system. Alternate static source. You still will have, say, maybe it's just the static source that froze up because you have a pitot heater, right? Maybe you turn that on in time and only the static source has disappeared. You pull that alternate. Guess what you do? Hey, you didn't lose anything. Hey, you got all three still. It's just knowledge of your systems. This is part of the troubleshooting. What do you do if the engine stops? What are the things that we can do if the engine stops? Somebody. What are the things we check? Sorry? Power? Not worried about power. Because the engine, even at idle, that prop should still be spinning.
It's windmilling.
Okay? But you said the one thing we do need to check. One of them is fuel. How do we check the fuel? What are the things we need to check? You can enrich it, yep.
Yeah.
Fuel selector, yeah. Maybe you're on the right tank, the right tank's empty. Or the left tank, or both. What else? There's something else that can stop the fuel immediately. Little shut-off valve down there. That is pulled out, fuel stopped. It is a shut-off valve. Make sure it's all the way in. If the prop is windmilling, what do? Say you've done all of it. We have the fuel pump, you can also test that. If the prop is windmilling, do you need to hit the starter? No. What if it stopped though? Is starting it, is that gonna do anything?
Maybe.
It might. You never know. If it's prop is stopped, the mags are not engaged. If you start it. Troubleshooting. There are things to do. If you've run out of fuel, is there anything you can do?
That's fine.
That's fine.
You've got
Find a place to land. Follow your checklist. What's the best glide in this airplane? Best glide. VG. Talked about airspace last time. 68. 68 knots for 172. I don't know what it is right now. This is why we know all this stuff. Make flashcards. Every VSP should have a flashcard. Every emergency procedure should have a flashcard. Every maneuver you do on the practice area should have a flashcard. Questions so far?
So if your like vacuum stopped working, is there any like way to check it, see if it like, restarted or something?
There's not. It is connected to the engine, and if the vacuum pump fails, which it can, then that's it.
Just go back up.
Now, I want to say that the POH for ours says that there's 2 vacuum pumps. I know on the a lot of multi-engines will have 2, they'll have 1 each engine. So we may have a backup to it. So if one pump fails, the other pump will have it generated in a vacuum for the system to still work. That would be the only way you have a backup. Not all airplanes do. Joe, do we have 2 or 1 on our planes? I feel like we only have
I
1.
think we have one.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that.
So you'd actually have to look at the POH in our airplane to see how many pumps are in. But yeah, good question. There's nothing you can do. But really, if you lose the vacuum pump, which ones did you lose?
Just the attitude.
Well, and the heading indicator, but you still have the compass. So really, you still know which heading you're on because you have the compass. Again, it's not fun to read, but it's still there. What other tool do you have in the airplane that can help you out in regard to heading?
You have a map?
Yeah, but that's not gonna help you out. Like, you're gonna have to already know what your heading is with the map. Or are you talking about a moving map?
A moving map.
What moving map? Somebody said it.
GPS.
Shh.
He
Unless I
said
call
it.
it. You said it? Okay, good. Yes, GPS. On the GPS, you can set up different things to be displayed. One of them is TRK, track. Now, that's not your magnetic track. That's your ground, well, it is magnetic. It's your ground track that shows up magnetically, but it's not it won't show you the way the plane's pointed, but it's gonna show the way you're actually flying across the ground. So that is another way to navigate. You know what heading you're actually flying. So yeah, you have other options in there. And the nice thing with the track on your GPS is it already is taking care of the wind correction for you. Because that's not the way the plane's pointed. The nose of the plane's pointed. This way it's actually traveling across the ground. So it's very helpful and handy. I use it all the time. When I take off runway 25, I know that if my track is 252, I am correcting for them properly and I am staying on the center line all the way up. If I'm flying on the downwind, my heading is 072, I know I'm perfectly parallel to the runway. I'm not drifting out or in. These are little tricks I use to make sure that I know which heading I'm flying. And I keep uniform distance away. Good. What else? Any other questions so far? about anything we've covered, guys, because we're done with this stuff for today. It's not a, I mean, that was it. Unless you have any specific questions on it, that's all you really need to know.
So all these instruments are, I mean, they're there to help you fly and they're there to correct you, make sure you're on the right course, but how often do you find in your personal experience that you're flying, you know, dictated by these instruments rather than, I mean, after you get your private pilot's license, after you get your pilot's license, how often is it that you're relying on these for anything more than corrections and accuracy?
Well, what kind of flying are we doing?
Recreational, VFR, yeah.
VFR, yeah, with visual. So when you're going on a cross country, about the only time you're gonna be using this stuff. Only time you're really caring too much about what's happening outside. Now, when you're doing maneuvers and things, the altitude and the heading are things you're gonna wanna constantly be checking, but you can set a reference outside the airplane. And when I say outside the airplane, I'm talking way out on the horizon, say we're here. So if we're out flying around out here and you're flying northbound or you want to do a maneuver or something like that, as far away as Denali, that's on the horizon. Not like
Big Lake.
Big Lake.
That you're gonna fly over.
It's too close. You want something really far away. As far away as you can get. So if you're out over Big Lake, Fire Island's okay. But I would go for the mountains beyond it, across the other, something really, really far away. That's the heading that you're gonna use. And what you'll see that once you start flying, is you will pick a spot out there that coincides with the heading you want to maintain, and now you're looking outside. Because again, why do we care? Why do our eyes have to be outside? Why do we want them out there?
Shit's going on around.
Yeah. Scanning for what?
Other airplanes.
Other airplanes. That's another thing. How dangerous do you think general aviation is? What we do? What?
So many things that like all the stuff we were talking about earlier, is like, you know, cut out, something wrong with like.
The environmental factors haven't changed, but the experience level of the pilot is drastically low.
Not only that, it's not just your own confidence, but it's the confidence of those around you. I mean, a CTAF is only as good as, you know, the people that are gonna use it.
What else? What else is the problem with CTAF? Like, who's on the CTAF with you?
Whoever else is in the area.
What altitude do you think they're flying at?
Oh, very similar ones.
Same altitude
We
you're
were
at.
at Yellow Centauri that almost smacked us in Philadelphia.
Yep.
Fucker.
Yep. What do you think the most dangerous places are for us? Airports for sure, not closer to the airports. How about the airports? How about inbound and outbound from the airports? Say the practice area?
Yeah.
Definitely. So basically what you're saying is everywhere we're going. I've had 2 near misses in the pattern. One, actually 3. 2 here, 1 in Colorado. The one in Colorado was severe. The person was 5 feet below me. You can't get much closer than that without touching. Here, ATC almost killed me because both instances where, so the one in Colorado and the one most recently here, the other one, ATC turned me in front of somebody. That was on them. And my student didn't look, and I hadn't seen him yet. They told us to turn now. My student hesitated. When ATC tells you to do something, do it. Or don't do it and tell my neighbor. Unless you're about to hit a mountain, and then I would definitely do what they say. But remember, anytime ATC does anything, they tell you to do something. Anytime you actually have, you need to follow their instructions, unless it compromises safety. In that case, you do whatever you have to do to save the plane and save yourself. But aside from the one where they turned me, my student turned a little slow, and they actually did turn us in front of somebody. The time in Colorado and the time here, the individual lost sight of me. The airplane that I was in, they didn't see us. The one in Colorado turned base and flew in and then turned up on the final right underneath me. We were literally 300 feet above the ground on short final, within a mile of the runway. We were really close. There's not a lot of roof there. Here, I was already established on final. We had been extended out because it was a pretty busy pattern. They were going to be making a right-hand turn, so they're on the north side of the airport. We were on the south side of the airport. Actually, we were straight in already. We were on the east side, straight in. They turned in front of us, we're cutting us off, and then ATC told them to turn and fly eastbound. So what did that do? Right towards us. They literally turned right into us. I had to take the plane away from my student pull-ups to avoid it because we were that close. That wasn't nearly as close as the other one in Colorado, but it still was really close and got my attention. My heart was really pretty fast.
With evasion maneuvers, if you're facing to the Gulf or have to like turn the bank to the right or
Yes, that is the book answer. When you're in that situation, dude, you do whatever you can to avoid the other airplane. They made no movements. They turned and oh hi, and I just evaded. And we pulled up and reestablished myself and continued on, and we did touching them. So the fun thing about both of those, and you'll find this also, is the guy in Colorado was a member of the flying club that I flew for. So I had a chat with him afterwards. And the individual that was flying the plane that turned in front of me was a fellow instructor at the flying school down the road, and we had a chat afterwards. So it's kind of nice when that happens. Normally I can lose my temper pretty good. Both times I was actually surprisingly calm because I think I was too scared to be mad. So, but yeah, the pattern is going to be a place that's very dangerous. Got to have your head on a swivel. Listen to the radios. What's happening on the radios? The CTAF. People talking on the CTAF. Why? Why do we want that?
There's no bad information on there. Every little bit's gonna help you.
Yeah. Position updates tells you where other people are. It's your situational awareness, what's going on around you. So that's really important. If you know you are being cleared to land at Ted behind a 747, maybe slow down a little bit. Give it some more time for something to dissipate. What would that be?
Quick turbulence.
Yeah. Now, ATC's going to give you some space, but
Should.
they're still going to warn you, caution with turbulence. So if you slow down more, give them more time, better chance of it dissipating. Because it does go away over time. So it's all about situational awareness, the what if game, risk management. Practice area is rough. We are told to maintain at or below 2,500 feet. We're all at the same altitudes in the same places, doing the same maneuvers. If you get up further north, I recommend getting ATC clearance to climb higher. Go up to 4,000 feet. What's the nice thing about altitude? What does altitude do for you?
Gives you time.
Time.
Just gives you
Joe just said that it gives you options. Time gives you more options. You're not in a rush. Like I said, he's videoing for one of our guys' team for the next couple of weeks. So he asked about that. So, yeah, what was one of the things I said about the takeoff? If you experience an engine failure abnormality after takeoff, I am not worried about altitude. I don't care what the altitude is. I am going to shut down checklist, no matter what. Finding a place to land. If I'm at pattern altitude, what do you think I'm going to do? I'll just do the power off 180 and land the airplane. It's not a concern at that point. I have options. I have time. I have altitude. I'm talking about 200 feet on the departure end of the runway. You have no options. You're not turning that airplane around at 200 feet. Not going to happen. You're not turning that airplane around at 900 feet. So that's the kind of stuff that you need to be aware of. That's the what if stuff, the planning, the understanding, the troubleshooting. What else? Other questions? Good. Let's talk about the left turning tendencies again. I will pull up the slide for you guys. I highly recommend you guys review this stuff. I will ask questions for previous things, especially like this one. We are done a little early. And I'll let you guys out of here a little bit early too.
I was gonna say, that's like two.
Was it? That was right past it.
After ground effect.
And we're strong. Yeah, there they are. All right. So this one I did not actually put any up there. So, I like drawing anyways. I highly recommend you guys get used to drawing this picture. Okay? This is a top-down view of the airplane, right? Fuselage, wings, tail, prop. So, somebody explain to me what's going on. Tell me about P factor. Slides up there, but I want you guys to be able to explain it because you need to be able to. Okay. It's an opportunity for review, guys.
This defect is because the propeller turns a certain direction. And that creates more lift on one side than the other.
Why though? Why is it creating more lift on one side than the other?
It's fixed pitch.
Okay. So it's a constant speed problem.
Because it creates a little pressure on one side.
No, we're not on the pressure one. You're right about the pitch of the propeller. Not because it's constant, because it's a fixed pitch, but because of something to do with pitch and something else.
Because it's fixed.
Pitch slightly up,
Okay,
and so the spin takes a bigger chunk, right?
okay. Why? Why is it taking a bigger chunk? Yes, it is angled more. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's taking a bigger chunk. Unless you throw something else into the mix. Is it just sitting there?
No,
It's moving forward. So remember, the descending blade, it's coming down on this side, right? It's advancing forward into the airstream as it does that. Because you're moving forward, so it's coming forward like this. The other one's coming back like this, away from the airstream. So higher angle of attack, lower angle of attack. Okay, the velocity is the same, but the angle of attacks are different because of the fact that it's moving through, and we are at a slight angle. The airplane, it has a slight nose-up attitude when it flies. Good. So why do we have more thrust on one side than the other?
The right side has a higher angle of attack,
Okay, and
which creates more of the
the big thing, it's advancing into the airstream. The other one's retreating. Okay, think about that, make the movements. Okay, it's going forward, the other one's coming back. It's very important, because that is really what's affecting it here. Okay, so advancing, one's retreating. So that is why. Now, we're generating thrust on one side and less thrust on the other side. Now, it's starting to make more sense. We have more thrust, less thrust. That creates a yawing tendency. And if the plane yaws, what else does it like to do? It likes to roll. Why?
Because eventually that left wing will be creating less lift also.
Why?
It's not moving as fast.
Well, because one wing is
Advancing.
advancing and the other wing is retreating. So we're increasing the velocity of one and decreasing the other. Good. Now somebody talk to me about spiral and slipstream. Because you start going into that already.
Pretty much the result of that imbalance and
Okay, but how and why?
because when the propeller moves around, it takes the pressure off from the right side as it goes down.
More thrust means what?
That's pressure.
Okay. Well, yeah, because you're generating more lift. But is this air moving faster or slower? Yeah, so it's faster. More thrust means that it's moving faster. Less thrust means that it's moving a little slower. How does that affect the pressures?
Pressure differential.
Say again?
Create a pressure differential.
How?
Lower
Which way?
pressure on the right side and higher pressure.
Don't say left and right, say that as the velocity increases, the pressure decreases. That's the better way to say, because in the left and right, we want to throw that kind of stuff out. I mean, obviously the right side of the propeller is the descending. Oh, I didn't say the right side, did I? I said the descending side. As it's descending and ascending and advancing and retreating. That's better terminology. Left and rights can kind of get you confused sometimes. You're correct. Side with the higher velocity is going to have lower pressure. So we have low pressure and higher pressure. So which way does the air want to go? How does it want to equalize? Low to high or high to low? High to low. So that means that the air is going to flow in this direction. And it's going to wrap around the airplane as it does that, because the propeller is spinning. As it does that, what's happening? How does that affect us? Strikes the tail. Now you can say left or right. Which side of the tail does it strike?
Left side of the tail.
And so if the air is coming this way and it's hitting the tail here,
It's gonna push the yaw in the direction.
nose is going to go that way, to the left. So we have another yawing tendency, and when the plane yaws, it likes to, okay, good. That's how P factor and spiraling slipstream work together. That's how you can explain that. Who wants to tackle the fun one? How about torque effect? Explain it.
It's using centripetal force. It's like with the bicycle, right? That's the torque.
Okay.
Just rotating it to the.
Well, once everything's stabilized, so with torque effect, when does it really affect the airplane?
Higher power.
Changes in the throttle settings, high or low. But mainly the book is everybody focuses on high because we're talking about the left turning tendency. Which way is everything rotating? Clockwise. So props moving clockwise. What's the propeller connected to? Crankshaft. All that's the internal components that the book talks about is the crankshaft. That's all spinning clockwise. When you advance the throttle, it creates a torquing action, right? It twists harder. Well, what law governs this? Which is?
Every action is equal opposite reaction.
Yeah. So it's cranking this way. So what wants to respond? What's the equal and opposite reaction? What does? The air? The plane. The airplane itself is going to rotate the other way a little bit. The wings help dampen this some. So there's still a turning sensation factor. So again, that's our third left turning tendency. And finally, the gyroscopic action. When that wheel was spun, which way was he spinning? Which way was it rotating? Clockwise. It was spinning clockwise. Which way did it turn though? It was rotating on the string to the left. So that's your left turn. And again, if we go back to this one, I told you before that this is felt most in a tail wheel. Because if you think this is at an angle and you push, you lift the tail up, you're pushing here, right? It's moving forward more. Well, where is that felt? 90 degrees. That's your left turn. We do feel that some, and from what we saw in the video with the spinning, it's always wanted to rotate in that direction anyways. So we constantly have gyroscopic precession playing a part on the airplane. Now, do we only have left turning tendencies? Why not? Has anybody ever seen that? Actually, if you look at the airplane itself,
Well, the tail itself isn't.
Yeah. it's slightly angled to make the plane turn to the right. I'll compensate. Now, the fixed, the trim tab on the tail, it's on the rudder, is what you're talking about, and maintenance sets that, and that is also a way that we can correct for the left turning tendency. So what happens though? Say we're flying along and we reduce the power abruptly. Say we're we're on the downwind and we're gonna land, all right? You guys understand what the downwind is? We got our runway here. We're landing this way. What end is this? Oh, is it?
No, it's down.
Aim. Tell me what that leg is in the aim. What you're talking about is this. Offset. That's the departure. The departure leg. All right. Departure. That's this one. Everyone calls it crosswind, but it's actually departure. Crosswind. Downwind leg, okay? You're flying parallel. At about this point, being your aiming point is when you want to start the figure. What's this leg? Base. Okay. I'm gonna pull that up. Actually, Joe. Yeah, so when we get to that point, we're gonna start configuring what happens.
All power and it actually goes right
A little bit. Yeah, the plane will turn to the right a little bit. You actually have to use left rudder to keep it on course. Otherwise, it will start to do this. And we really want to try to keep a nice rectangular course, unless winds don't dictate that. The very worst situation you can get into is when you are turning and you overshoot. Now you got to come back. It's not usually a bad thing unless you have parallel runways. What's in between the parallel runways, ATC folks? What's that called?
No-fly zone,
Oh, I'm sorry?
like a no-fly zone.
There's an actual name for it. It's the no transgression zone. If you cross out, what did you just do? It's a runway incursion. People get freaked out by that and they try to compensate, they correct for it. And you get yourself into a bad situation. So I'm gonna get the aim for you. I'll show it to you guys. Any other questions while I'm looking this up? Which aim is that? Which section? 3 dash, is it 3?
4-3-3.
4-3-3. And if you go to 4-4, I think, maybe 4-3-. Let me see real quick. The very next section shows the other side of it. That does show the no transgression zone also. So 4-3-3 will show you the no transgression zone. And the names of each of the different legs on the traffic pattern.
Close.
There you go. If you go to 4-3-2, it will show you the upwind leg and the departure. Do you have it?
Yeah.
Go to 4-2-3. Or sorry, 4-3-2. All right, I want one really good question we can talk about for a couple minutes, and then I'll let you out of here.
I don't know if this is a good question, but in the chapter 8, talks about the flux gate compass system. Where does that come to?
That is talking about the HSIs. I'm not going to get into that.
Okay.
That's we don't have any on our airplanes, so you don't have to worry about it. What was your question?
How do you get out of a skid?
How do you get? Oh, that was actually a really good question. Well, at first, what is a skid and what's a slip?
I think I feel I don't know. But is it like when you overshoot and you try to go back or something? Like your head like spin past your
Kind of. Well, but
Just an uncoordinated turn where you're getting about air.
they both are.
What's that?
Slips and skids are both uncoordinated.
Right. So when
But which one's a slip and which one's a skid?
instead of just using
You're using too much rudder.
too much rudder.
So think of it this way: when you skid your car, what's happening? The tail's coming around, right? The outside of the turn. A slip is when the tail's on the inside of the turn. So you're turning to the left, tail drops, and you're turning like this now. That's a slip. A skid is when the tail's coming around. Either way. So you're skidding the tail. You're using way too much rudder. Now, it's not a bad thing. So to fix a skid is use off the rudder a little bit in your turn. You don't get into skids really. You just add too much rudder, and now you're skidding there. So it's not a big deal. Why do we want to be coordinated on takeoff? What's the importance of coordination? I'm sorry? When you are using the proper amount of rudder, so everything's streamlined. The ball is centered on the inclinometer, so the air around the plane is going across it as smoothly as possible. Why is that important?
Don't yet have enough velocity to counteract the loss of lift by being uncoordinated.
I mean, either way, it's not really lift you're losing, you're increasing something else pretty dramatic.
Parasite.
Yeah, you're increasing drag big time. Because you are using the fuselage, the air is hitting the side of the fuselage and it is slowing the plane down. You are decreasing your performance. And in a time when we typically want max performance, we want to be climbing, we always want max performance on climbs. So you definitely want to be coordinated in climbing. I've already told you before, I'm not really that worried about coordinated stuff. You can fly around all day long just using the rudder, as long as you don't let the plane, you don't roll it on its back, you're gonna be okay. So when you get into a turn, add enough rudder to get the wing to drop, and you just ease off a little bit and just add back pressure, and the plane will turn nice and gentle all on its own. You really don't need to do much. If you want to get into the turn, using ailerons and rudder, add rudder and aileron together, more aileron typically than rudder, and the plane will pivot nicely, and then you'll get into the turn. Once you get the plane back to where you want it to be, neutralize the ailerons, add a little back pressure because you're losing that vertical component lift, so you have to increase some back pressure. And you'll just use the right amount of rudder to keep the plane in a nice turn. You don't need a ton of rudder typically, especially in left-hand turns. And in a climb, if you're turning to the left, do you think you need any left rudder at all? No. Just ease off the right rudder a little bit in a left-hand climbing turn. If you add too much left rudder, now you are going to be skid. Yeah, because remember, the plane's that you're at a high power setting, high angle of attack, low airspeed. You already have a ton of heat factor, ton of torque effect. Yeah, but there's another one with P factor. You also get spiral and slipstream. Think of a slinky or a spring. When it's all packed tight together, that's what's happening. It's spinning around here very tightly, spiraling around here. and there's a lot of air striking that tail. As you increase your velocity, start stretching it out, there's less and less air striking because it's getting spread out as you accelerate. So, with your climbing, your slope is very tight. Good. All right, guys, we'll call it an early night. Did everybody sign in? Who has talked to you upstairs real quick about flying? Has anybody gone up there and talked to them?
Not gonna shoot.
I'm sorry? Nobody? Okay.
And